Lieutenant Marcus Chen's distress beacon had been transmitting for 6 hours when the storm hit. His reconnaissance pod had malfunctioned during atmospheric entry, crashing somewhere in the uncharted wilderness of Veridian 7. The planet wasn't supposed to be inhabited. Intelligence had marked it as abandoned decades ago after the mining operations dried up. He was wrong. The wind screamed through the crystalline forest, each gust threatening to rip him from where he clung to the wreckage. Ice formed on his visor, and his suit's heating system flickered warnings across his HUD. Hypothermia in 20 minutes. Survival probability, 11%. Through the howling chaos, Marcus saw her emerge from the tree line like a ghost. She moved with impossible grace through conditions that would kill most humans in minutes, her slender form wrapped in layers of dark fabric that seemed to drink in the fading light. But it was her skin that made his breath catch, a deep, luminous purple that seemed to glow faintly in the storm's twilight, visible through the gaps in her protective gear. She didn't ask permission. Her violet eyes locked onto his, and even through his failing suit systems, Marcus could see the determination burning there. She grabbed his arm with surprising strength, fingers closing around the reinforced material like a vice. "Move!" Her voice cut through his comm system, accented but clear. "Unless you want to freeze into a statue for the scavengers. I can't just—" "You can and you will." She yanked him forward and Marcus stumbled. His injured leg buckled, but she caught him before he fell, wedging herself under his shoulder. "My shelter is 300 meters. You won't make it alone, and I won't drag your corpse that far." Something in her tone killed his protests. This wasn't a request or even an offer, it was a statement of fact. She was taking him whether he cooperated or not. They moved through the storm, her path seemingly random but clearly purposeful. She navigated the crystalline formations with practiced ease, using them as windbreaks and guides. Marcus's vision blurred, his suit's systems cascading into failure one by one. He wasn't even sure he was walking anymore, or if she was simply dragging him along with that impossible strength. The shelter appeared suddenly, a half-buried structure carved into a hillside, camouflaged so perfectly that Marcus would have walked past it a dozen times without noticing. She pulled him through the entrance, and a heavy door sealed behind them with a hiss of pressurized air. Heat. Blessed, wonderful heat. Marcus collapsed onto the floor, his body trembling uncontrollably as sensation returned to his extremities. Through his fogging visor, he watched his rescuer secure the entrance, her movements efficient and practiced. Then she turned to face him fully, and Marcus saw her for the first time in proper light. She was beautiful in an otherworldly way, with sharp cheekbones and that striking purple skin. Her blonde hair, pulled back in a practical braid, seemed to shimmer with an inner light. "Welcome to my home, Lieutenant," she said, her voice carrying an edge he couldn't quite identify. "Now we discuss payment." Marcus's hand instinctively moved toward his sidearm, but his rescuer's eyes followed the motion with casual awareness that suggested the gesture was pointless. "I wouldn't," she said, settling into a chair across from where he lay. "Your weapon's power cell is frozen solid. You'd get about half a charge before it died. I, on the other hand, am very much at full capacity." She gestured to the shelter around them. "This is Kira Velshara, by the way. Since we're going to be sharing close quarters until the storm passes." "How long?" Marcus managed, his voice hoarse. "The storm, 3 days minimum, possibly 5. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees. Which brings us to our arrangement. I didn't agree to any arrangement. You did when you let me pull you from that wreckage instead of dying with dignity out there. Kira's smile didn't reach her eyes. On Veridian 7, rescue carries obligation. I saved your life. You owe me a debt. Marcus forced himself to sit up despite his body's protests. I'm a coalition officer. I can arrange for compensation, medical supplies, technology, relocation if you want off this rock. I don't want your coalition credits or your technology. Kira stood, moving to a small preparation area that served as a kitchen. She began heating something that smelled surprisingly appetizing. What I want is much simpler and much more complicated. Then what? She poured 2 cups of steaming liquid, offering him one. Marcus took it carefully, the warmth seeping into his frozen fingers. It tasted like spiced tea with undertones he couldn't identify. I want you to listen to my story, Kira said, settling back into her chair. All of it, without judgment, without interruption, without immediately trying to fix things with your coalition solutions. And when I'm done, I want you to carry a message back to your people. That's it. You risk your life in that storm for a messenger service. That storm? Kira's laugh was bitter. Lieutenant, that was barely a breeze compared to what this planet throws at us regularly. Saving you was inconvenient, not dangerous. She sipped her tea, violet eyes studying him over the rim. But yes, that's the price. 3 to 5 days of your attention and a promise to deliver my message. Can you manage that? Marcus considered. He had no choice, really. His emergency beacon was buried in wreckage, his suit was dead, and even if he wanted to brave the storm, he had no idea which direction would lead to safety. But more than that, something in Kira's eyes spoke of pain carefully contained, of words long held that desperately needed release. I'm listening, he said. Kira's shoulders relaxed almost imperceptibly. Then let me tell you about the real price of survival on Veridian 7, Lieutenant. Let me tell you what your coalition abandoned here, and why I'm the last one left to remember. Kira's story unfolded over the first night, her words painting a picture that made Marcus's chest tighten with every revelation. She hadn't been born on Veridian 7. She'd been brought here as a child, part of a Zelathi colony, 200 families seeking a fresh start after their homeworld's economic collapse. The coalition had offered them mining rights, promising fair wages and eventual citizenship. We worked the crystal mines for 15 years, Kira said, staring into her cup. The formations you saw outside, they're valuable beyond measure. Each one can power a starship for decades or provide energy for an entire city. We extracted them carefully, sustainably, the way my people have mined for centuries. Then what happened? The coalition found a way to synthesize them. Kira's voice remained steady, but Marcus saw her hands tighten around her cup. Cheaper, faster, and without paying fair wages to purple-skinned aliens on a backwater planet. Overnight, our contracts were canceled. The supply ships stopped coming. They promised transport off-world within 6 months. Marcus felt the dread building. How long ago was that? 23 years. The number hit him like a physical blow. That's impossible. Coalition law requires follow through on evacuation promises, requires basic humanitarian aid. Kira's laugh was sharp. Your people are very good at writing laws, Lieutenant, less enthusiastic about enforcing them when it comes to non-human colonies on planets nobody cares about. She stood, moving to a wall covered in carefully preserved photographs. Images of families, festivals, children playing among the crystal formations. A thriving community. The first winter, we lost 37 people. The old, the very young. The storms grew worse as the planet's climate shifted, something about the mining disrupting atmospheric patterns. Her finger traced over one photograph showing a young girl with blonde hair and bright eyes. That's me the day we arrived, full of hope. Marcus joined her at the wall, studying the faces. What happened to everyone? Some tried to leave on their own, stealing shuttles or building ships from salvage. None made it past the atmosphere. The storms are too unpredictable. Others spread out, thinking isolated homesteads would be safer. The wildlife got them, or the weather, or simple accidents with no medical help available. She turned to face him. I'm the last one left, Lieutenant, the last survivor of a colony your coalition forgot. Why didn't you leave? You obviously have the skills to survive. Because someone needed to remember. Kira's eyes blazed with intensity. Someone needed to be here when, if anyone from the coalition finally came back. Someone needed to tell the truth about what happened here, what your people allowed to happen through bureaucratic indifference and convenient forgetfulness. I'm sorry, Marcus said and meant it. Save your apologies, Kira replied. I want action. The second day brought a shift in the atmosphere between them. Kira showed Marcus around the shelter, revealing the impressive survival systems she'd built over 2 decades of isolation. Solar collectors hidden in the crystal formations, water purification from underground thermal vents, hydroponic gardens growing modified crops that could survive Veridian 7's harsh conditions. Even a small medical bay, though Kira admitted most of her knowledge was self-taught from salvaged databases. You could teach survival courses with these setups, Marcus said, genuinely impressed as she demonstrated her water reclamation system. This is sophisticated engineering, necessity and 23 years of practice. But there was a hint of pride in her voice. These Zelathi are natural problem solvers. We have to be. Our homeworld isn't exactly hospitable either. As Marcus's strength returned, he found himself helping with daily tasks. Together they reinforced the storm shutters, prepared food, organized supplies. The work created a comfortable rhythm, and Marcus noticed how easily they fell into synchronization. Kira anticipating his movements, Marcus adapting to her efficient methods. Tell me about your family, Kira said during their evening meal, surprising him with the personal question. Earth-born, mother's a stellar cartographer, father runs an agricultural research station on Mars. 2 sisters, both younger, both smarter than me. Marcus smiled at the memories. They think I'm crazy for choosing military service. Are you crazy? Probably, he met her eyes. I wanted to see the universe make a difference. The recruitment videos made it sound noble, protecting colonies, ensuring peaceful expansion, upholding coalition values. And instead you found abandoned promises and forgotten people. Not just here, Marcus admitted. I've seen it on other worlds too. Budget cuts, shifting priorities, populations deemed not strategically important. But never anything like this. Never an entire colony just erased. Kira was quiet for a moment. You really didn't know about Veridian 7? The files listed it as mining operations concluded, planet returning to wilderness preservation status. No mention of an existing population, active or otherwise. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. Someone buried this deep. Or everyone simply stopped caring enough to check. The truth of that statement sat heavy between them. But beneath the weight of it, Marcus felt something else growing. Respect for this woman who'd survived impossible odds, who'd maintained her humanity and dignity through decades of isolation, who'd kept hope alive even when every rational reason for hope had died. "Your message," he said. "Tell me what you want me to say." Kira's expression softened slightly. "Not yet. Tomorrow when the storm breaks. I want to show you something first." That night, as Marcus settled into the sleeping area Kira had prepared, he found himself thinking not about the mission he'd been on, but about the one he'd unexpectedly discovered, and about the remarkable woman who'd forced him into her shelter, demanding payment in the form of truth and witness. He was beginning to understand the real price had nothing to do with what she'd asked. It was what he'd have to pay with himself, his beliefs, his loyalty, his willingness to confront uncomfortable truths about the institution he served. The third morning dawned clear and crystalline. Kira suited up and gestured for Marcus to follow, leading him through passages that emerged into the heart of the crystal forest. What he saw took his breath away. Among the gleaming formations stood a memorial, hundreds of crystalline markers, each one carefully carved with names, dates, and brief epitaphs. The morning light refracted through them, creating rainbow patterns that danced across the clearing like spirits given form. "I carved one for each person," Kira said softly. 216 souls. Some I knew well, others I only met briefly before they died, but each one deserved to be remembered. Marcus moved among the markers, reading names and stories. Scientists, artists, miners, teachers, children. An entire community reduced to crystalline tombstones and one surviving witness. "This is what I want you to tell them," Kira said, her voice carrying across the clearing. "Not just that the coalition failed us. That's abstract, political, easy to rationalize. I want you to tell them about Petra Velkan, who taught children mathematics until the day she froze, helping others to shelter. About Torin Marshall, who jerry-rigged the last medical synthesizer to work 3 years past its expected lifespan, saving dozens before it finally failed. About Myra Selthas, who was 6 years old when she died of a preventable illness because no supply ship came. Marcus felt tears on his cheeks, unexpected and unstoppable. "I'll tell them." "Will you?" Kira turned to face him fully. "Will you really, or will you file a report that gets lost in bureaucratic channels marked as unfortunate but unavoidable circumstances and forgotten like we were?" "I swear to you," Marcus said, his voice rough with emotion, "I will not let this be forgotten. I'll go to the media if I have to civilian oversight committees, to anyone who'll listen. These people deserve justice, and you deserve acknowledgement for what you've endured." Kira studied his face for a long moment, and whatever she saw there must have satisfied her because she nodded slowly. "That's the real price, Lieutenant. Not listening to my story, but carrying the weight of it forward, being changed by it, letting it matter enough to risk your career, your reputation, your comfortable beliefs." "I understand. I don't think you do, not yet." She walked to the memorial's center where the largest crystal stood. "But you will, and when you start facing the consequences of speaking truth to power, remember this place. Remember that some prices are worth paying." They stood in silence among the memorial markers, two souls bound by circumstance and choice, by debt and duty and something deeper than either. The crystal forest sang softly in the wind, a requiem for the lost and a promise for the future. When Marcus's rescue ship finally arrived 2 days later, He carried with him documentation Kira had carefully preserved. Logs, records, testimonies recorded over 2 decades. But more than that, he carried the weight of 216 names and the fierce determination of a purple-skinned woman with blonde hair who'd refused to let her people be forgotten. As the ship lifted away, Marcus watched Kira standing in the clearing, surrounded by her crystal memorial. She didn't wave, didn't make any gesture of farewell. She simply stood as she had for 23 years, a living monument to perseverance, a witness who'd forced one reluctant officer to see the true cost of institutional indifference. The real price, Marcus understood now, wasn't what she demanded of him. It was what he'd chosen to pay. The comfortable ignorance of a soldier who believed his service meant something, replaced by the uncomfortable knowledge of a man who'd seen the failures of the system he served, and decided to fight to change it anyway. 6 months later, when Marcus stood before the Coalition Council, presenting evidence that would trigger the largest humanitarian investigation in recent history, he thought of Kira. Alone on Veridian 7, but no longer forgotten. The shelter had given him warmth and safety, but the woman who'd forced him into it had given him something far more valuable: purpose born from truth, and the courage to demand better from those who claimed to represent justice among the stars. That, Marcus had learned, was the real price of survival, not just staying alive, but living with meaning, speaking for those who couldn't, and never forgetting the cost of silence.